turn it on.
Thank you.
So we're opening today's Wednesday, October the 25th hearing of the Clear Creek County Board of County Commissioners for the purpose of continuing the conversation that we had yesterday. What we did was we listened to all four candidates that had been selected as finalists, had the interviews with them. We also listened to public comment. And I'd also like to make the statement that I had read all of the public comment that has been sent, every word of it that has come to us previously through email or whatever method, as well as read every single word of all of our applicants' documentation prior to this. And knowing my two colleagues that I think they are usually equally or more thorough about that stuff than I am, I'm guessing that they had done the same. But we wanted to think about that overnight, and also recognizing it was late in the day and some people that would have been in the room either the night before for the special open house for the Sheriff's Department and the candidates to be here. And after hearing what they heard yesterday, I thought not only personally, I think it was a good idea for Sean to suggest that we wait until today, because it gave not only us the time to think overnight, but some of the folks to think about what they heard and send us any more comment. And I received a little bit of comment last night via email. So it was good. And I'm glad we took the time to do that. That said, I think we should move on to it before we start talking about the actual, opinions about what we've heard and what we're thinking about that. Are there any introductory comments that either one of the two of you would like to make in addition to what I just said?
I'll just repeat what I said prior to public comment yesterday, which is if people are here to comment, and I don't see anybody in the room that's likely to have a public comment, maybe we have some people online. I would encourage you to, be specific. There's probably thoughts in your head that haven't entered mine, and I'd love to hear them.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I forgot to also mention, I meant to with these opening comments, that the next, as with almost all of our meetings, we're opening this meeting with, after these comments, with another opportunity for public comment, which we announced would have that, everybody would have that opportunity this morning. So if there's anyone online or in the room, Sean, anything?
No.
I think out of respect for the people that are here, one of the things that I heard that was most obvious to me was that this has been a long process. It's been going on for a long time. There's been, as one person put it in the discussions yesterday, a lot of trauma for the department. People have been going through a lot. And what I've heard from that department is, and seen, is a lot of frustration with the uncertainty of what's going on going forward. So I think it's incumbent upon us today to, in my opinion, to go ahead and make sure that in my opinion right now, and we can hear what the other commissioners have to say, that we make every attempt to get on and make that decision today, so there's certainty moving forward and everybody knows what they're doing and can choose their paths.
Mr. Chair,
yes,
there are people online who have raised their hand.
Okay, good. Then let's, with no further ado, let's go to public comment.
Awesome. So we have, first one is Autumn. Autumn, I'm going to promote you to a panelist. Okay. And then you can go ahead and unmute yourself and then state your name and then do your public comment.
Yeah, if you could state your name and also where, generally speaking, where you live, not specifically, but generally, and then your public comment, please.
Thank you, County Commissioners. I'm Autumn Brooks, a resident and concerned citizen of Dumont, as well as a community and legislative advocate and activist within the county. I have done work in various pertinent subjects, including but not limited to justice and police reform, human and civil rights, including racial justice, disability protections and rights, mental health, affordable housing, etc. All of these are areas that are highly interconnected, and with a small community such as ours, what is done here with this decision will tip the scales. However, our decision, or hopefully your decision will be one that puts the county on the path of healing. I have only had experience with one of the candidates, so I'm not going to give my biased opinion here. What I do have is fear for my autistic teen. Right now, I fear that if something were to happen that could lead to their dysregulation and a mental health crisis while they're not with me, the only thing I will have is a child coming home in a body bag. This is the distrust of the current culture and system within our department has for myself and many others in the community. The 4 candidates have widely varying areas of expertise and their strengths vary as well. Realistically, the perfect candidate doesn't exist and there will always be a flaw. That is why we have a department. No one is perfect. So multiple people within the department assist in filling in the gaps. For many, proximity and credentials seem to be playing roles in several divided areas within our community. Promoting from within is not just a culture within the department, but it is ingrained in our community and we usually celebrate it. Unfortunately, current culture is the way it is because those within either didn't attempt to change it or weren't successful with their attempts. This is not to shame anyone applying from within. No regular citizen could possibly understand what it's like to work in the department in the last few years. Then there are the outsider candidates. No matter how you slice it, they both have the heck of a learning curve and a crash course for learning and will be an obstacle for them to overcome. All candidates have mountains of these obstacles for the next year in the areas that we need to correct. None of them carry a magic wand to fix it right away. If they did, the community would not be divided like we are. The commissioners now have the difficult task of choosing someone with the goal of never repeating what happened to Christian Glass. When all is said and done, we will have a new sheriff that the community will have to work with to make our county a better place. Godspeed.
Thank you. Do we have any other hands up?
Yes, we have another one.
And I forgot to mention, and I think that Ms. Brooks did stay within that time period, but again, we, as always, we stay within 3 minutes.
Yes.
So thank you.
All right, Graham, I'm going to promote you to panelist. Graham, you can go ahead and unmute yourself.
Hey, how's it going? I wasn't expecting video. If I'd known there was video, I would have gotten a haircut.
Getting a little shaggy.
I'm going to try and stay within my 3 minutes. First, I'd really like to thank staff for getting the interviews up on YouTube so fast. I wasn't able to pay attention all day yesterday due to work commitments, but I was able to go through and listen to all of the interviews again. Some getting, catching up with some and indeed listen to a couple of them twice. And second, I'd like to say that I find myself in the very unusual circumstance of actually trusting politicians and county commissioners. I've watched you guys over the years, and I believe that everything that you do is in the best interest of the county, and I appreciate it. So candidates. I was only able to catch the second half of Mr. Harris's interview live. And, I came away from it thinking, what is this guy doing applying for sheriff of Clear Creek County with his incredible history and experience in law enforcement? He seems very overqualified for the job. When I caught the first half of it, I believe I caught him saying that he was of retirement age with the federal government. And I'm wondering if this is a double dip situation. And I have to say that if it is, it might be a big win for our county to get someone so deeply experienced for this position. if you're looking for someone to cut your budget, he's the only candidate that I heard point out things like the jail is only 50% full. Now, I know that everyone's working really hard at the jail, but it is unusual for a jail to only be 50% full. I hadn't thought of that, but, and he's the only one that I heard say things like that. Investigators with 3 cases, he felt, generally there might be, 11 or 12. I think if you're looking for someone to come in and take a serious look at the budget, plus have some credibility, clear credibility in law enforcement, he's probably a good guy to do it. Now, that said, it concerns me. You asked him if he was going to move his family up here. He said he was going to move up here. He didn't say anything about his family. I appreciate his candor that he might not run for re-election, depending on what he sees and what he's able to accomplish. Again, I think that might be a check in the plus column for him. It might give us a kind of a try and buy situation with someone of his caliber coming in as to whether or not he can get along with the department, increase morale, etc. Moving on. I was surprised, somewhat shocked to hear Mr. Stein dig in on the budget during his job interview. I was dismayed to hear that his only response to the budget was again to cut what he calls the animal shelter. I call it Charlie's Place. I think there's 9,000 people in this county, and all 9,000 of them will give you a different answer on everything, but not Charlie's Place. It's the point of pride in this county, and it shouldn't be touched. And, the fact that we rescue dogs from kill shelters, I'm proud of that. And I don't see that as a negative or something that should be on the chopping block. Sorry, I'm getting a bit emotional on that one. So I think I've told everyone that knows me, I never give money to politicians, but I'll give money to people that rescue dogs. I feel that the way that he dug in immediately again on the budget is legacy Albers. It's not productive, and I don't think he's the right person for the job.
Mr. Knight, I wanted to let you know that I think you're well over 3 minutes now, and if you could wrap up quickly, I'd appreciate it.
I will.
Thank you.
I see Brown is polarizing. I move on from that very quickly, but I do want to say that Seth is a really impressive individual. I believe he'll bring a sense of morale and history to the department that is sorely needed. I don't know that he's ready for the budget question. So in interest of time, I'm just going to wrap and say, I think Harris would be an interesting try and buy. And I would really like to see Seth promoted to undersheriff.
Thank you for your comments.
Thank you.
Do we have more?
No. Anybody else want to do public comment? Please raise your hand and I'll promote you.
Let's give it a few seconds. Yeah. And just so people know, again, if they happen to be watching or following on Facebook, Facebook comments are not part of official public comments. So if you wish to have official public comment, you do need to log into the Zoom. And although it would have to be pretty quick, because in a few seconds we're going to stop asking that question. Is there anyone in the room that wishes to make public comment while I think I'm going to give that a second longer, like yesterday, somebody popped in.
Right.
Is there anyone in the room that wishes to make public comment today? Hearing none in the room, seeing none in the room.
No one online.
How many people do we have watching online?
We have 34 people watching on the Zoom.
Okay. I think at this point in time, it's fair to say that public comment is closed. Moving forward, I think I'd like to just make some comments about my assessment. Each one of us is going to think and talk about what we want and then have discussion about it. I wanted to be clear that I appreciate all four applicants and the other applicants who didn't make the finalist list for putting their names in. Based on everything I've heard, there were pluses and minuses in every column, but I think I've come to a conclusion that I feel fairly decent about. At the current time, and pending what I hear from from my colleagues here, my top pick for this, I think, is Matthew Harris. And the reason for that is because of the years that he does have in law enforcement. He does not have post-certification. However, he has had to perform similar and comply with similar certifications that are used instead of the federal government. And the indications are that at this point in time, I would suggest the offer goes to him for various reasons, among them that he is able to receive a provisional post-certification based on a lot of the trainings that he's already had. And I think there may be some work to be done there to find out, but I think that's the case. I also think it's because I know myself, this is true in my life, that when you swim inside the goldfish bowl long enough, you may not even know you're a goldfish. You may not know what change really feels like on the outside. And I think it's important that we do have a fresh set of eyes in here. And as much as I respect all the work that people are doing and the institutional knowledge of the people that are working here, two of the applicants in the room with us right now, both Mr. Stein and Seth Marquardt, that I think a fresh look from the outside with organizational ideas for change that Mr. Harris has demonstrated in his previous work in the federal government over a long period of time, as he's demonstrated the ability to make those changes. So I think he was my favorite candidate so far, and the one I think that can be the most helpful to the county. There are a lot of political questions about who runs in 2024. Even if a person that we appointed did run in 2024, that doesn't mean other people can't run. And there's also a political timeline moving forward that I'm familiar with, that no matter what party you come from, you need to be generally vested in that party or go through other kinds of hoops like petitions to get onto the ballot. And it's not too many months off before you're behind the eight ball on that. And so anyone who intends to run should know that it's nothing you can wait till September and make up your mind next year, you know. And I also want to make clear on my end that I have, marginal knowledge of party affiliation, when it comes to that election. I don't really care where they come from. I don't care who they voted for in the last couple of elections. All I care about is how well they're able to demonstrate themselves as human beings and their character through their resumes, and looking me in the eye yesterday and at other times when I've had interactions with them. And it's based on all of that, plus the fact that I noted that in the surprisingly to me, that in the comments that we got after our open house, and they do remain anonymous, that Mr. Harris did receive as high ratings as he did for an outsider. And it was, of course, not unanimous for anyone, but he had good support from within that group. There are a lot of other reasons that I think are good. I also feel like our two internal candidates displayed a great body of knowledge. I was really impressed with, the age factor wasn't even a thing. Mr. Marquardt, I thought, performed very well in his interview. I thought everyone performed well in the interview. I think there's a lot more professional development. I think the guy's got a huge future, and with some additional professional development going forward and the opportunity to see other ways of thinking about things coming from the outside, it's going to have a really big future here or somewhere. And I hope it's here. I really do hope that you do stay, like you said. And I appreciate all the work that you've all done. I don't have a lot more to say right now. I wanted to just pitch it out there because I think we owe it to our staff to They're all adults and the people want to know the answer and they want to know it as soon as possible. So I thought I'd just pitch it out there and let you guys roll with it. So.
I came to the same conclusion. And I wanted to say again, thanks to the 4 candidates. I mean, I don't know what it's like to be a peace officer. I do know what it's like to put myself out there and to get voted on. And I appreciate the courage that you all took to do that. One of the things that I was kind of concerned about that Mr. Knight referenced was Matt's candidacy almost seemed too dialed in, and I thought something has to be amiss here. And I got an email this morning at 4 a.m. from a county resident who did what I had hoped to be able to do, and I just wanted to read a little bit of this. It's not a public comment since he sent it directly to me, but I'm not going to identify who it is. But anyway, this person is employed as a state patrol, and here's what he mentions. This Clear Creek Sheriff's Office is in desperate need of reform. The training background and outside perspective of Harris will be key in starting that process. After listening to his interview, I reached out to U.S. Marshal, another person who's in the state of Nebraska and a personal friend. He could not be more positive about Harris. There are no hidden issues or agendas. And yes, this person would tell me if there was. I believe Harris has the tools to move the department in a positive direction. He has a training perspective and experience necessary to facilitate positive change. Clear Creek Sheriff's Office must ask itself some hard questions. A culture change is in order. Harris appears to have the tools to ask these questions and challenge the culture. So I really appreciate getting that. And that's that kind of removed a little bit of my concern that I had. And like Mr. Knight mentioned, I think his short-term focus is exactly what we need. And if he decides to come in here, if he accepts our appointment, and if George agrees, I like the idea that he's focused from now until next November. And I think there should be a robust, I think this should be a position that's highly sought after and competitive. And I feel like that's going to be, well, that's my inclination right now is Matt Harris.
Yeah, I agree. I think Matthew Harris is a pretty clear choice. I'll describe some of my rationale. I thank you, Randy, for pointing out that in a couple hours' time, in a first introduction to sheriff's staff, Matthew Harris was able to build credibility and interest and that we received in the anonymous comments. In the email comments that we received, all of them either said they wanted Harris or another. In terms of my own evaluation, I think what we get with Matthew Harris, in addition to what's been mentioned about the experience, what I view is I think that we get balance. I think that what I saw in that interview was balance between an understanding of how policing needs to adapt itself to new expectations, increased transparency, increased scrutiny, as well as a commitment to the primary role of law enforcement, which is protecting people against violent crime. And it's something that he has deep experience in, deep passion for. I had heard some of his comments in advocating for dealing with recidivism and with, prioritizing violent crime over nonviolent crime. I had the opportunity to ask him that question because when folks talk about harsh penalties and use terms like revolving door, it's a little bit of a flag for me. I thought he was able to explain himself very well. And the combination of that and being able to speak very credibly to the fact that police officers are more than warriors, and was really good. I also thought I saw balance in terms of leadership style. I thought I heard him say a word 3 times that I really appreciated, which is unacceptable. It's important for leadership to have bright lines that cannot be crossed, and also to communicate those lines in a way that's fair, in a way that's open, and to make sure you really know what's going on before you make decisions that affect people's careers. And I thought he represented that balance as well as a leader. So, I think we're lucky as a community for whatever circumstances that have led him to be interested in this job, that he is interested in this job. The big weakness, the glaring weakness that I think needs to be discussed here is that, not discussed as though I haven't made up my mind, but just referred to, is the fact that he does not know our community. When he came here to Georgetown to this office for the meet and greet with sheriff's staff, he didn't know how to get in the building, right? Or where to go in the building. And so he's going to have a lot to learn. He's going to have a lot to learn about us. He obviously has the analytical skill set and the leadership skill set to come in here and learn. And I think he's interested in doing that. And I would point out that on this side of the house, we have had a lot of turnover in our leadership. Of the dozen or so division director and up positions that we have in this community, in this organization, almost all of them are new faces. A lot of them are hires from outside the community. I'm looking at 4 right now that have, to a person, shown up here, gotten to know us, shown their drive and their desire to serve the community and the people of this community, have embedded themselves here. Whether they've moved here or not, they've embedded themselves in the service organizations of this community. And very importantly, have brought a perspective of broader experience of other organizations and how things work in other organizations. When I was elected, we had almost to a person people who had only ever worked here in Clear Creek County and had kind of invented the systems that we use out of their imagination on the fly. And they worked. They weren't, the county hadn't burned down. But we've also, I think I've learned that the value of outside experience and outside perspective is something to take very seriously as a benefit. So I'm very comfortable with this decision. I'm very comfortable with what feels like unanimity on this. Well, there's unanimity on this board. Feels like unanimity on this staff is something that sheriff's office staff can trust and look up to. That's going to treat sheriff's office staff well, that knows law enforcement, that can build credibility with them. And I think he gives us the best shot to accomplish the 2 things we need to do, which is build security for the staff of the sheriff's office, while insisting that some of the patterns and practices of the past cease. So sorry, that was long-winded, but
That's okay. I was sitting here thinking of all the things that triggered me that made me want to say something. We can rotate through a couple more times. I think looking at at Mr. Harris's resume, seeing his adaptability to the different roles that he's taken. And they, yeah, it's been in the federal government, but they've been completely different kinds of roles, whether they were whether they were heading investigations at a Department of Housing, whether they were acting as a federal marshal and chasing down hardened criminals and those folks. And I liked the balance that I heard too. He still is obviously dedicated to the role of law enforcement and loves that job, and more than any of the jobs he'd had the most. I know he told me that what he liked the most of the different jobs he's had with the federal government, and they've all, in every case, he's risen to a position of leadership wherever he went immediately. It was the federal marshal role, which means that law enforcement itself is something that he really loves, and he loves getting right. Because of that, he has a great affinity for and dedication to other people who want their life to be law enforcement. And so we have a lot of different competing views about what law enforcement should be, some of them better and some of them less well informed. And the thing I liked was that he brought, as George pointed out, that balance where, rather than talk about what law enforcement shouldn't be, what he talked about was how do we direct them towards the places where their function is actually the most useful, needed, and performs the most good with the amount of time spent. In other words, when he talked about just exactly what you said, what I saw was when he talked about the harsher, the same flags rose in my head, harsher penalties, tough on crime, that kind of stuff, except what he was talking about was the fact that those most hardened criminals and those people that are the most danger to the community were the ones that were rotating through, for example, his state and using it as a no man's land to jump from state to state. And he had to fix that and so rather than focus on the small pettier offenses and the things that we would actually, some of which we would put our CCHAT team on, for example, instead, he would focus them on those people that were slipping through the cracks because he wasn't putting enough resources towards. And so he moved to 90% working on the stuff that did need to be moved on and left the other stuff for other people to work on. And I thought that was an excellent example of that kind of leadership. Another thing I liked that was almost a point of confusion and failure for him that turned out to be a positive for me in the interview was when he was asked about the situation of tell me when you had to make an ethical decision that was difficult, when you had to apply your ethics, when you had to reach in the drawer that's marked ethics and pull ethics out. And he didn't know how to answer the question. And it became clear after a little bit that he said, well, and then I realized that every decision he made was what came out of that was every decision he makes is an ethical decision. That's a lens. That's a special set of glasses he never takes off because that's how he was raised and that's how he was taught, that you never forget your ethics. So that the idea of having to think about ethics, especially in this situation, was never something that occurred to him because it was something from which he never deviated. And I thought the combination of the balance that George mentioned and that particular idea that he lives by his ethics every day in every decision was a really cool thing to hear, and really something that I think lends itself well to leadership, because the tone of an organization always reflects, if the leader's active, always reflects what that leader is doing, and the way they talk, and then the way their actions back up their talk. And if he turns out to be that kind of guy, I think he will have really been the right decision for us. So
The only thing I would add is that I don't think has been mentioned is the only feedback I got privately from our law enforcement, and I think there was a public statement made as well, is please give us somebody who knows our world. Please give us somebody who has a deep law enforcement background. And I'm glad that it looks like we're going to be able to do that.
There's one thing, I'm sorry, George, for rotating you. Okay. One thing I was thinking of a little bit ago too, was that I know there's been a lot of fear in the organization. It's been stated as fear. It's been described to us in that word. There's no one in the organization that I certainly have a desire chase out or change or remodel or that I carry a harbor a grudge towards. I think what's really important since he comes in, which was pointed out, which was he didn't, knowing where the bathroom is when you enter the building is a good thing. I've noticed that all the people that work for us now that have come in the last few years can all find the bathroom now, and they know a lot of things and have taken the time, for example, to do ride-alongs with me and look at where I've seen problem areas in the county as a commissioner and say, here, I just want you need to know this about this history before you jump to conclusions about what decisions are. I know I've done that with Brian repeatedly because of things that he has to manage. And we have that opportunity to talk about that. And I think it's important that no matter how good he is or not, that when Mr. Harris comes in, that he receives that from both sides of the house, that he understands from us, because we want a collaborative relationship between the sheriff's department and this side of the house, where we really are talking enough, even when we disagree, to get on the same page or as close as we can to it and understand each other. It's going to be critically important that we do that for him too, to walk into this job at this moment in time. So I'm really hoping that everybody here is collaborative with him and works with him and helps him know the things he needs to know that he doesn't about this county and this place. And I know that's certainly going to be my intent on my side too, is to make sure to have communication with him and not in the vein about what I think needs to be fixed. And that's law enforcement stuff. The law enforcement team and Mr. Harris, should he accept this, can figure that part out. I just want to, after 50 years in the county, be able to talk to him about the county a little bit, so he's more familiar with the terrain he's walking on, which you folks will be explaining to him also. And I don't think I have anything left to say today.
I want to talk a little bit about the future, the relationship to the sheriff's office. I think this is the appropriate time to do that in public, speaking directly to sheriff's office staff and the public. I really look forward to a future where we have credible information about what the sheriff's office can do with current resources and what they can't do, about, credible analysis of some of the policy decisions that I've seen debated since before I got into this office, like the U.S. Marshals program. And to know, I think our mission in this fiscal environment has been to do everything we can to make sure that we've reevaluated our systems and processes, our way of doing business, to be as efficient as possible while remaining effective. And I think that's this board's commitment, is to look under every rock, make every decision that we can to build the kind of organization that can deliver services efficiently. And before we make decisions that would dramatically reduce service provision, we give the voters the opportunity to decide to pay for the services that they value. And what I'm referring to is by giving them an opportunity to vote for a tax increase. I do think that that's going to be necessary at some point. There's been a lot of conversation on this board about cutting costs. And that environment since 2015 has been palpable. The anxiety of the staff on all sides of the house and in every elected office around, am I going to have my job tomorrow? I think this board has said it ad nauseum that we are not asking for people to lose their jobs. We are asking for no cows to be sacred, so to speak, with regards to the way that we used to do things. And I think within the sheriff's office, I really look forward to a future where we can say credibly with a unified voice and believe it myself and have the public believe it, that we've gone through that process and we're ready to tell the public, here's what we're able to do with the money that you're providing us today. And what that means today is that if you want to continue to see these services that you value, if you want to know that you're going to get quick response from your law enforcement with a well-trained officer, you're going to continue to have a bus program, everything else, the animal shelter. And for me, that you'll also see us be able to do some things that we've been, I think, failing the people on with respect to housing, recreation management, wildfire mitigation, and propping up childcare. That's the future I think we can build together. It's the future I want to build with Matthew Harris. We can only get there by being honest and transparent. And I think even prior to this decision, we saw an important, not even first step, a very important step in a session that we had in our last public meeting, where two of our applicants had a very open conversation with us about some of the options in the jail. And so I think the future is bright in Clear Creek County. The pace that we're able to solve problems is increasing, and it's not quite the pace we need it to be able to overcome these challenges, but we're building momentum. I think this decision today is another big step in that direction.
I agree with that. The one thing I would build on that George mentioned is we still have a long way to go, just in terms of our ability to solve problems. And I look at the LDS Church every single time I drive up here and think about what a failure that is, because we spent something like $500,000 of the taxpayers' money. We bought that thing right after I got elected, and I'm almost out of office, and we haven't done anything.
Looks exactly like it.
So that's a reflection of our inability to execute on something that we say is very, very important. And so to me, a tax increase to solve our problems, solving those type of operational problems comes long before I'm ever going to stand up here or anywhere in the county and say, I want to have a tax increase because lack of money is what's keeping us from solving problems. But I hope we get to the point where we've increased our operational capacity, and I can come to the conclusion, and people who think like I do, to say, well, people deserve, I completely agree with George said, people deserve to have the opportunity to make that choice. I just don't think we're quite there yet. I look forward to getting there.
Yeah, I think each one of those conversations, I said a little bit ago, I was lying a minute ago. So I said, I have nothing else to say today. I agree with that. I think that we have to ripen and bring ourselves to a point of maturity in some of these discussions to know when we're ready to go to the ballot box. And I think that's what I hear Sean saying. I also want to make a clarification to something I said a little bit ago, because I don't want to be a liar. When I said I want to be able to talk about when I go out with when I have the opportunity to speak with Mr. Harris one-on-one, and I hope and expect to do that as I used to do with Sheriff Albers. And I said, I don't want to talk to him about too much about, the sheriff's department, the personnel within the sheriff's department. I mean that. That's not, individually for me to say, to point fingers or anything like that is highly inappropriate on my part. I wouldn't want to do that. The difference is when I talk about the openings between the silos so that we actually get on the same page. When we talk about the things like the jail and things like that, that is where I do want to be able to have conversations. And it's not about how a jail should be run. In this case, and to give it a specific example, I've had a concern for a long time that I completely agree and understand the idea that when a jail sits half full and it's taking a full staff to run it because of the way the jail is built, the size it's built at, the purpose it's built at, which was to be able to house a population the size that would accommodate a federal marshal program for the purpose of supposedly making money. We built kind of a little bit of a monster that you have to keep full and fed in order to make it work. And so those unit variables of bringing in more people into the jail are required to buy down the overhead because of the staff it takes to run something that large and beginning to get that run down and requiring so much maintenance. Somewhere along the line, one of the things that may have to go to the voters as an example, and I'll just be blunt about it, is we have to make a decision. There are reasons to not outsource jail to another county which are being able to keep the people that our own population generates into a jail in touch with their families and people like that in order to lower recidivism, in order to be able to give them a better opportunity to regain their life or get past this bump in the road that they've hit. And so those are there are reasons on both sides of that equation why it might be best or worse to do one or the other. The question going forward in the long term is if we're losing $1 on every sale because the amount of money we get from the federal marshals program is less than it cost us at the holistic level to house that prisoner, then we've got a model that isn't working. It's like a business that's heading towards a fiscal cliff it's going to fall off of and go bankrupt, and it doesn't even know that that's what's happening until it's too late. And so it could be that as we reach a state where that jail is aged out and takes massive costs to be able to maintain it, remodel it, and keep it going the state that it's in, there may be a capital cost that's involved where we bite the bullet to build a better long-range future, where we build a jail that's appropriately sized for our own population, where you don't need a federal marshal program at all. You built something that's modern, state-of-the-art, lowers recidivism, and is built at a scale that we can afford. And whether that means a kind of like a dispatch center or anything else, it's something where you partner with surrounding counties and do something that works for everybody. There are a lot of hard decisions to be made and a lot of things to be weighed. And that's the kind of open-mindedness I hope that we have, rather than continuing to look at the way we've always done it. You know, to know whether that, you know, we have to determine whether we've learned now whether or not that larger jail we built to be able to accommodate a federal marshal program was really a good idea for the county or not. And if it wasn't, then as we get towards a massive capital expenditure, either to maintain that or to cease to maintain it, those are the kinds of really, really objective decisions that I think we need to make going down the road to make sure we build a better future. And so those are the kind of places where you will hear me talk, you know, I mean, where I say it's the jail operate, you know, when I say I don't want to predetermine how Mr. Harris feels about anybody that's working in the department, I mean that. When it comes to talking about what we need to be able to talk about, where we have to marry these two, we come together. The nexus is the budget that's between us and also the benefits we see that's given to the community. We want to be able to have that open dialogue all the time and think open-mindedly. And I'm always willing to change my mind if I can learn something that tells me I'm wrong. And you've only got 15 more months to put up with that anyway for me, so, at least in this capacity.
The other thing I had in my mind that I want to speak to, and I'll try to be brief here, I'm going to be brief, is just to say that one of the things that Mr. Harris said is that you can't teach ethics and you can't teach personality.
Seth said the same thing.
And I disagree.
Mhm.
I think we can. I think people respond to leadership. I think that, but that's just kind of an entry into something that has been on my mind that I want to say openly, which is that we all make mistakes. We're all humans. Systems make mistakes. When you're in public office, that means that you get to own your mistakes publicly. This board has had many moments where it's had to do that. Our staff as well, in the sheriff's office as well. When you're able to, part of resilience, part of overcoming what we've been dealing with in this community is owning our mistakes. And being honest and reflective about how we can do better next time. There's going to be a next time. We're all here. We all have a chance to continue to do our best to improve. When I see genuine intent to improve and be honest about the mistakes we've made, I'm not going to use that as a reason to attack somebody. When somebody comes to me and says, you know, I've been doing it this way for 5 years, and actually I think it might be better that way, you have a choice. You can either say, how are you so dumb to have done it that way for 35 years? Or you can say, thanks for having the courage and the adaptability and the innovation to say we can do better tomorrow.
Yeah.
It's an ethic that we really need to have in this organization. And it's an ethic that I hope we can bring to this organization. And it's my commitment, and I think our commitment to this organization under every elected office, that's going to be our attitude moving forward. I've done my best to have that attitude to date. And I've never had a chance to say it. And I feel like we're in a moment where saying stuff like this is important.
I think it's true that I also disagree with the idea that we can't. Here's the deal. I can't change somebody else. Only they can change themselves. But they have more opportunity to change themselves when they're surrounded by examples of how to be better. And I'm 75 years old. I learned something. I mean, there were things that changed my mind, and I learned from every one of the applicants yesterday talking to us. And so conversations I have with my colleagues, with staff, with my family, things I run into, people I run into everywhere cause me and listening to myself sometimes and thinking about it the next morning about what the hell did I say yesterday? It's like, wow, I learned that was wrong. That was closed. I didn't get it. So I changed because I heard myself say something that was wrong. So we're really infinitely variable people, and we can always change, but we have to have the influences around us, the environment that helps us learn from, so that we can make the decision to change ourselves. It is true that if you don't want to be changed, I can't change you. That's, when it comes to substance abuse and things like that, that's one of the primary tenets is, in the end, you're the only one that can change yourself, but you can make that decision, especially when given the examples. And top-down leadership I don't want to say top-down leadership because it has other connotations. The leadership at the top of an organization is one of those examples about how you can get things done and live your ethics every day and become better. And I think, it's changed. That's changed me over my life. I've become a different person over my life as I've gone through it. And I think we all do. So, I think I'm just finding other words to say the same thing you just said.
We're like wading into philosophical terrain here.
Yeah.
We are.
Kind of what I think I heard was you can't teach character. And ethics to me is a completely different topic. And in my mind, character is something that's forged over a lifetime.
Right.
And it's forged from hardship and from tragedy. And that's something that you can't teach somebody in a matter of weeks or months or maybe ever. And so I heard something a little bit different.
Yeah, but I heard you just say it's forged over a lifetime. And so that implies that you continue to learn and forge it over a lifetime. So that implies continual changes. And that's all I'm trying to say. And I can't change you, but you might see something I do that helps, or you'll have an experience because of something that happened, and you'll see how somebody handles something. And, that's part of that forging process. That's all I meant. So, but we each have to make our own decisions. We'll choose our own destiny, regardless of what some scientists say.
Thank you all for indulging us as we discuss this. It's pretty clear what the decision is going to be. I have some questions about process moving forward.
So as a housekeeping matter, we would need direction from the board, not a motion, just direction from the board to reach out to Mr. Harris regarding the board's intent, to conduct a reference check, to begin a background check, advise him of that as well, and to attend to other matters and prepare for an anticipated nomination and appointment of Mr. Harris to be the next sheriff of Clear Creek County. That would include completing some forms that we need to do for the Secretary of State. Then we would bring it back for an actual appointment. Mr. Harris does need to reside in the county to be appointed sheriff. So we will need to coordinate that as well.
And that's
Right.
essentially having a lease or contract out of some
He
sort of.
needs to have a lease, but he does need to actually be sleeping here. So
Yeah. And to be able to meet that legality is one thing, and then to meet the intent is another. And it would be one of the things that would be good to know down the road, although maybe not required at this point, is what that long-term intent is. And then the other piece is the post-certification piece. I know we've had indications of that should be not too difficult in his case. It would be nice to get a good feel for that, about what that really is, what it means, but it doesn't, I'm not saying in order to make a final decision, I'm prepared to give staff direction today.
So just so you're aware, the post-certification, the statute requires that a sheriff or appointee to sheriff needs to be certified within 1 year of the appointment.
Right.
There are situations where just cause can be shown to allow for an extension for up to 2 years to get that post certification. That is, again, separate from the appointment itself. If Mr. Harris were not to achieve or abide by those requirements, the board would be required by statute to withhold his salary at that point.
Right. And I understood that from a previous conversation we had. It is my understanding that an actual post-certification that if someone has received the law enforcement, the same training, the same equivalent training, that they're able to more quickly get through that post-certification. If, for example, in his case, if he's been through federal training, it's equivalent of that.
So I can't speak to specifically what post decision would be. I would tell you that there is a provisional certification. Whether or not Mr. Harris qualifies for that provisional certification is a post decision. I can't even offer you.
So that was my initial question, is what is it would be nice for us to know what that is so we can kind of see the future going forward and what's going to be required. But that doesn't change for me. That doesn't change my decision today. I'm just stating that's information that would be nice to have sooner rather than later. So,
and we will get that information as well. I'll talk to Mr. Harris about it, make sure he understands the various requirements.
Yeah, just confirm it.
And to communicate that as we learn to communicate that with sheriff's office staff, so they understand what this transition looks like in terms of timelines.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
I think the other thing that's worth mentioning is, I believe in order to be eligible to run for office, you have to also live here 1 year prior to the election, correct? So
Yes. So
if he
Mr.
wants that
Harris,
as an option, he would basically need to.
he would need to
Get
live
busy.
here by November 4th. The election next year is November 5th after this.
Mhm.
So he needs to be here a county resident for 1 year prior to election.
Yeah, that all sounds good to me. You've got my approval.
Yep, same. With that, I noticed the agenda was very short this morning, and I think we may have already completed it. So with that, again, thanks to everybody. Thanks for your applications, the two of you that are in the room. I really appreciate it and your service. And I hope that you're able to, should he accept the offer, I hope you guys are able to work well together and forge a bright future. So, and otherwise, anything else?
Just in follow up to what you're saying, just that, we have trust in you under Sheriff Stein to continue to lead this organization during this interim period. Thank you for your service to us today, as well as you said, Mr. Marquardt.
With that, we're adjourned. Thanks.